Good afternoon, YouTubers. Joe here on April 30th, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And today I'm going to address something that's moderately serious. Well, heck, it's not moderately serious, it is serious. It falls under the general category of anti-gay bigotry. Let alone all the associated misunderstandings and stuff that then, goes up a spectrum to just avertful hatefulness. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal here. Well, actually, the article appeared today, but the sort of the pre-edited version was yesterday afternoon. And I got into an extended exchange with, well, a number of people, but one in particular about this guy, Jason Collins coming out. I guess he's a NBA player. I think he plays for Washington. Now, I tell you, that tells you pretty much all my knowledge of the NBA ever for the last 20 or 30 years, because I just don't pay attention to it. But here's this guy. He's 34, and he comes out. And I, like a moth to the flame in the comments section, I said, good for him. No more life on the down low, and being a de facto constant liar and feeling like a spy. Now, I just wonder how many people in the Wall Street Journal commentariat are familiar with the term down low. I don't know, maybe quite a few of them. I mean, I'm aware of it, and I'm pretty much out of the loop on pretty much everything. So maybe that's now becoming even passé as a term. So this fella replies, I'm not going to use any names, obviously, says, he wasn't lying, no one asked. No one cares. So then I said, straight folks, and you know who you are, have the luxury and advantage and default position of being assumed to be straight. And if they are indeed straight, then their lives and actions are not seen by their friends and associates in a false light. Even if they engage in adultery or other sexual peccadillos. Gay folks presenting themselves as, or not openly clarifying the fact that they are not straight, are living a lie, and therefore are de facto liars. The issue of a question being asked does not obtain. When I decided to stop living in deceit and subterfuge and live as openly gay, the only grief I got was from long-term friends who felt betrayed by my dishonesty toward them. Clearly, judged by the number and explosiveness of emotion in the remarks from various members of the Wall Street Journal commentariat, a great many people care about this. Although perhaps if I'm granted another 30 or 35 years, I will live to see it be no longer the case. Then another fella replies, Joe, apparently you don't get it. Heterosexuality is not a lifestyle. It's not a default position, as you call it. It is a means to an end. Oh, and here it comes. We know what's coming now. It is a means to an end, i.e., family, children, home. Well, perhaps it is. Because it is really not that important in a grand scheme of things. Well, that almost just, well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It is the natural way, I love that, natural way of achieving these ends. We don't flaunt our sexuality because it is not really that important in a grand scheme of things. Well, that almost contradicts what he was saying, or his underlying premise. More of that anon. There was a time not so long ago when sexual activity of any kind was not discussed in public by polite society. Well, that time's gone, guys. That's just over with. There's ways to do it now where you can be polite, but, the fact is it's going to be discussed. I often find myself longing for those days. Well, I long for a lot of other stuff, from the past as well. This isn't particularly on my list, but yeah. So we who profess to be attracted to the opposite sex do not find a need to let the world know, and we really don't care to hear about those who are attracted to their own gender. Interesting, gender, not sex. That's your business, in caps. Share it with whom you wish. Leave the rest out of it. Leave the rest of us out of it. It's not that very important. Okay, so I then replied, I was not calling being straight a default behavior. I was calling the assumption that a stranger one meets is often assumed by default, absent some other evidence to the contrary, to be straight, the default position or assumption. Being straight, since it is an ontological category, is not a lifestyle. It is a way of being and living and perceiving and interacting with the world and other people, especially those of the opposite sex. Similarly, being gay is also an ontological category. A way of being and living and perceiving and interacting with the world and other people of either sex in this case, if, as sometimes happens, those ways morph over into what can properly be described as a lifestyle, just as the suburban, exurban, nice house with 3 kids and mom and dad and a good school system, etc., all supporting the way of life just described in the above comment, becomes a lifestyle, then there are indeed grounds for stating a dislike for some aspects of that. And here I'll just be flat out honest, of course. I am myself not a fan of the flitty, in-your-face behaviors. And I said I'm not a fan of the flitty, in-your-face behaviors either. Another disclaimer, and here's the real nut of the issue as far as I'm concerned. Well, among other nuts involved. No pun there, guys. I am not a fan of having to pay exorbitant real estate taxes to support the pleasure drome type schools. And they are. They're flat out pleasure dromes, guys. They're like luxury hotels. Built in the area in which I have lived for 30 plus years to support the straight lifestyle I just described, and no, I'm not going to move. I imagine that if a straight person felt constrained by convention, job security anxiety, loss of emotional support network. I'm sorry, I really don't like to talk like Oprah very often. To present himself as something completely other than he was, and not just in sexual orientation categories. Politics comes to mind, racial bigotry attitudes come to mind, etc. It would not be, quote, very important, unquote. It would be quite important indeed. So that's my little word of the day on that issue, guys. Otherwise, it's a really glorious day out here. Paul's inside on his computer. I've been trying to read a little bit in my computer book, but not getting too much understanding. But that's okay. I seem to be able to use this okay. So I'm going to say bye-bye now, YouTubers.